would like to invite you all for the webinar and also introduce our guest for today, Mr. Rajesh Sengamedu. He has 21 years of corporate and entrepreneurial experience in business development, sales, marketing. He is experienced in selling and marketing software, consulting services, and semiconductor solutions to worldwide market. As an entrepreneur, his startup was involved in launching retail kiosk model-based digital content distribution network for Tier 2 India. Before I hand over the floor to Rajesh, here are a few pointers to all our attendees. You will all be on mute. You can type in your question in the panel provided. Over to you, Rajesh. Rajesh, you're on mute.
Thank you, Sneha, and good afternoon to all of you. In this next 45-50 minutes, what I plan to do is very quickly take you through a couple of things about building leadership skills in teams and share with you the perspective that I have, that I bring in from my own personal experience as well as from the experience of others that I've closely observed and worked with. So if you look at, when you look back at Gandhiji's leadership, this was rooted clearly in understanding that the British wanted India to be a net importer of goods, and they wanted us to be totally dependent on England. And this has nothing to do with arms or violence. It was more of making us dependent on them for our economics. And then what Gandhiji did was he inspired and motivated others to become self-reliant and fight the British in a non-violent way. So this was the common and key uniting purpose and method that echoed very well with the people of India. Now, that's something that's interesting for us to understand, and I will talk to you a little bit about purpose and method when we go forward in this presentation. And at the other end of the spectrum, although I'm not a big fan of cricket, I have seen Dhoni, and Dhoni has played pretty hard. And if you've seen the match of 2011 World Cup, I believe he was a match winner for us in the World Cup. He was a performer, and he let his performance speak for itself to his team as well as to the spectators. If you have seen the winning parade when we won the World Cup in 2011 after a 28-year gap under the leadership of Dhoni, it was clear that Dhoni was underplaying himself and gave all the spotlight to Sachin, his team member, who probably had all the feathers in his cap except the World Cup. So these two people were leaders who inspired their teams through their leadership skills. These skills are, understanding the people in the case of Gandhi and uniting them with a common actionable purpose and a vision. And in the case of Dhoni, it was underplaying himself, being humble, giving the team prominence, although he is also a great performer. So what I'm going to leave you here is a couple of inspirational quotes from both Gandhi and Dhoni, and the sum and substance of my presentation is covered in the above quotes. So I'll just leave this for a minute. Please pick and choose what quote you want to read, and then I will move forward and start off with my presentation. Two different people from two different times, having two different causes, but there is a little bit of common element in what they're doing. So let me just move on and kind of first, before we go into the defining leadership, let me tell you my perspective about what is not leadership. Okay, if you have read any book by Ravin Sharma, and you will know who Ravin Sharma is, and he kind of talks about a lot of motivational stuff. And one of the books that I had read long back, which struck in my mind, was this book called leadership without title. And in Ravin Sharma's words, remember that you don't need to be a leader, need no title to be a leader. Leadership has less to do with the size of your title than the depth of your commitment. I have seen frontline employees, taxi drivers, and carpet installers doing their work like Picasso painted. Leadership isn't really about authority. It's about a choice. Leadership is about a choice you can make to do your best work each and every day, regardless of where you are planted. So, first of all, I want to kind of help you understand my perspective. Leadership is not necessarily a title or position in the organization. And leadership is not meant for management or senior people. It's meant for everybody. So let's talk about what exactly is leadership. Okay. In my view, leadership is assuming responsibility. Leadership is exhibited at all levels by everyone, irrespective of job titles or job profiles. As an entrepreneur, you have already decided to focus your efforts on a problem and solve it. You are starting with a clean white paper and writing your own destiny. The key is to remember that all through your entrepreneurship life, especially when the going gets tough, that you have the power to focus and you can focus, and that's displaying leadership. And even if you're an employee in some company, the same rules apply. Assume responsibility, focus, do fewer things well. So leadership is the ability to feel and show meaning, motivate and manage oneself, motivate and energize others, communicate, have an unwavering moral compass to guide decisions. That's exactly how I would define leadership. Now, what I tried to do in the next couple of slides is I tried to break down this concept of assuming leadership into 7 simple no-nonsense elements as listed here. I didn't try to use any management jargon. I tried to put it in simple English so all of us can understand it. And these 7 elements are not in any particular order of importance. However, what I feel is it's always good to start with oneself. So I'll take you through these 7 elements one by one, and I'm going to share a few thoughts and give you a few examples so to help you understand each of these perspectives. So a 2010 McKinsey study on how centered leaders achieve extraordinary results show that executives can thrive at work and in life by adopting a leadership model that revolves on 2 elements. First is finding their own strengths and connecting with others. Okay? So a quote from that article that is relevant to this element of knowing and managing yourself is, one of those people who were surveyed, he answered like this: our senior team is always talking about changing the organization, changing the mindsets and behavior of everyone. Now I see that transformation is not about that. It starts with me and my willingness and ability to transform myself. Only then others will transform. So what's important for us is to understand what are your motivations as an individual. Are you motivated by money, fame, learning, power, helping others? What do you value? Do you value team goals higher than your self goals, or vice versa? What kind of a person are you? Are you a logical person? Are you intuitive? Are you instinctive, emotional? How do you use fear, anger to manage others? Do you use that? How do you use that? What's your integrity? What are the ethics that govern you? The third thing is to understand what is the emotional state that you're in. Usually, what kind of a person are you? Are you usually cheerful and happy? Are you prone to mood swings? Are you angry most of the time? Or are you peaceful? Are you stressed out? And of course, there's a past baggage that we carry. What we are today is governed by what we have gone through in our life. And sometimes the reactions that we do to situations is a very common pattern. Okay, so these are all important. And if you as an individual don't know, or you are not curious about yourself, then how can you transform yourself into a leadership attitude? So the second step that I want to take you through is managing yourself as a leader. Okay, so I wrote an article sometime back in my blog where I wrote, the title was Define Who You Are to Solve Your Problems. My core idea was that unless you know and understand yourself, how can you make any change? Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is ask yourself constantly about your motivations and past baggage. Gain clarity. What is it that gives meaning to your life, to your work? Okay, so to give you an example, when I did my startup, I was not clear of my motivation to start out, other than just start, create a high-value company, make money. It did not work out, as I had to face conflicting situations in the journey where decisions were not taken in line with the basic motivations. We constantly started asking ourselves, how long would it take to recover our opportunity cost of being an employee? The problem was I was not clear on the meaning of the startup was offering to me. The vision was narrow, to admit the least. And to give you another example, I know a bunch of entrepreneurs who have created successful small startups, including consultancy services, because they were clear they wanted to be small, do meaningful work, enjoy life, write a book maybe, so on and so forth. So it's important to observe yourself constantly. That provides a wealth of information, and to understand yourself, to understand your emotions, and to manage them. Now, the second thing is, how can we claim to lead if we are not physically fit? How can we claim to take a responsibility if we are not able to control our emotions instead of the emotions controlling you? It's absolutely important to stay physically fit through regular exercise. You reduce your downtime. I recommend you, being a yoga buff myself, I recommend you to do yoga or other forms of exercise that suits you. So basically what it does is it cuts down your downtime and keeps you fit for the day. And more importantly, equally important, is managing your emotions, controlling negative emotions, beating stress, anger, jealousy, sadness, hatred. These are all very strong emotions. They cause stress, and if you don't manage them, and when I say manage them, consciously manage them, they cause immense damage to you and to others around you. So I recommend you to meditation and breathing exercises. Now, take responsibility for your actions. Reflect on the actions and the results. That's the third element of managing yourself. For example, I will kind of say, let's say you are responsible for a pricing decision of your product or service. Although you will take inputs from many people, remember the final decision rests with you. If the product bombs in the market because of pricing, then you take the responsibility for failure. Don't pass the buck and turn around the story by giving excuses. Accept the failure. In another example, I will share with you. This is a personal example. I was once given a feedback that I did not take care of my team member's interest and somehow belittled his contribution towards a project. Although I did not feel the feedback was appropriate. Maybe, I was just trying to justify myself. Perhaps on that day, my body language, my tone may have given that impression to others. I started reflecting. It was indeed clear to me that I did not go with the right attitude towards my teammates' interests and contributions. I did go back and apologize to the team member, and from then on, I was more conscious of how I should support him. So you should lead by example. Here again, I want to bring back Mahatma Gandhi and Dhoni into picture. Both of them lead by example. Simplicity, experimentative, tenacious, being the change they want to desire in the world. The second most element is to understand people around you. Understand people as they are. Accept them. Make them feel safe with emotional dialogues. Do you know, for example, what are the motivations of your team? What do they like? What do they dislike? What is the style of working? Is he an early bird or a late night guy? What is the type of person he is? Is he an emotional guy, or does he do enough logical analysis before he takes a decision? You need to understand that. If you don't understand them, understand people around you, how can you actually work together with them and motivate them and guide them according to their nature? Remember that, things like, having a name or a fame or power or wealth are considered as common yardsticks for success. So as a leader, do not criticize or condemn such notions. If you do, you will confuse people or even make them reactive, defensive, or rebellious. Let me give you an example. We had an employee in our startup who used to leave office at 5 p.m. every day. It was unthinkable for us as we were working late nights every day. And here was this guy who was leaving so early every day. It was really, really agony for us. to think of him enjoying his evening while we slog. One day we decided to confront him and ask him, why is he leaving so early? His answer was simple. I go to an English speaking course to improve my communication skills and my class starts at 6 p.m. When he said that, we were actually embarrassed by his answer. However, the dialogue created a space between us to work around his need to learn and our need to get the work done from this guy. And once we understood each other, we started working around the timing, what he had, and we started cooperating with each other, and this contributed well to the startup. So leverage their strengths. Don't overemphasize training to overcome people's weaknesses. Trying to change others when they are not ready disturbs them. I'll give you another example. I had a team member who was very good in data analysis, presentations, but was tongue-tied when he had to meet up with customers. Unfortunately, he was in a customer-facing role. So over a period of time, I had to transition him out from a customer-facing role to a marketing role. So these are the kind of decisions that you need to take when you understand people better and try to match up their strengths with the role, what they want to do. And, you know, you should listen with empathy and pay full attention to the moment that you're talking to your team members. Listen to your team members. You know, switching off your mobile and things like that are simple things that you need to do. But the most important thing that you should do is listen without judgment and mental chatter. And the other most important thing, how to manage your team, is that you should learn to let go and don't expect perfection. Each one of us is very different, and each one of us think we do the perfect job. Remember that when people do things differently, you know, you should not expect them to meet up to your standards of perfection. I mean, I can give you this example. I can't take care of the house like my wife, and she's not as good as what I am in investing in the stock market. If she expects me to keep the house spick and span, or if I expect her to make investment decisions the way that I do, we will end up in a Mahabharata war every day at home. It is not going to happen. So the third point, you need to know what needs to be done. So which effectively means that as a leader, you need to be clear about the goals of your organization. Why are you doing the startup? What's in it for the people who are toiling away to create value? You should be able to articulate the goal. Understand what needs to be achieved. You have to prepare a hypothesis of the future and articulate it. If you don't understand the goals, don't fear to ask questions to yourself and to your other team members and clarify the goals. Internalize the goals. That's when decision making becomes very easy. Remember this, you know, what I always feel is that the goal worth striving for is always that has a larger good. What is it that is beneficial to all the stakeholders in the startup? So when you start out, you know, usually it's always the founders. So you should base your decisions based on what's good for the founders. And when you start taking in investors and people as employees, you need to make a call on, you know, who are the most important stakeholders, and try to derive your decisions based on the larger good of those people who are the stakeholders in your organization. And the goals that serve the interest of only the founders or investors always are inferior to a shared goal. Once you start evolving a shared goal, that gives more power and momentum to achieve those goals. And the second thing which is also important is, this is all big blue sky thinking and all that stuff. So how does it actually work in day-to-day life? What's more important is, once the shared goal is clear, every small decision that you take on a day-to-day basis, you should be able to connect these short-term goals to the larger team goals. So if you have to make a small decision today about spending X lakhs on something, or hiring or firing an employee, if you ask yourself this question, how does this fit into the larger good of my startup, then I'm sure that you will be able to take the right decision. So I recall a bunch of entrepreneurs who wanted to build a small boutique company and had no grandiose vision of creating a high growth startup. Their key interview question when they were hiring people was to ask them, would you like to work for a slow growth boutique company where we enjoy working with each other, or rather would you work for a fast, high-paced startup? If they were not convinced that the person's true interest to work in a small company, they would reject it. So that way you're able to filter out people that you don't that you already know are not aligned to the goal that you have. The fourth point is know how to do it. Okay, I've got 2 points in here. One, I call it as karma yoga in practice and right attitude. Let me explain. Karma yoga, as Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 says, is performing selfless actions. If you focus on a personal goal, then that is selfish. If you focus on a larger goal and not on your personal goals and base your decisions on the larger goal, then that is selfless action. Also, as a leader, in your sphere of work, you should lead by example. This is the best way to guide others. As a leader, you must be detached, patient, enthusiastic, dynamic, and inspiring. And if you remember always that the underlying motivation should be welfare of all, then it is great. I'll give you an example. You take the case that you are a customer-facing leader that you will face all the time, negotiations. Now, if you view negotiations as a race to show your one-upmanship over your customer, then you become suddenly attached to the outcome of the negotiations. This attachment will give impatience in your mind. It will misguide you, give you misguided enthusiasm. And over a period of time, this impatience and misguided enthusiasm will result in anger, and then you lose control of the situation. Being detached, I don't mean to say apathy. Rather, it is that you got to intensely observe the situation and live in the present, living in the now to resolve the situation to the welfare of all. That's how you know. That's what you know how you have to do it in the right way. The next point is, this I find it very, very hard. Okay, but the point is, if you can't measure something, there's no point in doing it. And you need to know, you need to be asking yourself, how do I measure what I'm going to do, or what my team is going to do, or what my startup is going to do? Okay, so in large corporations where I have worked, it is very clear that the performance of salesperson, for example, okay, was measured on only one parameter, revenues. So if the salesperson did everything possible to maximize the revenues, and in turn, the sales commissions they were entitled to. Okay, the challenge is this strategy worked in general for the company and the salesperson. The strategy was not in the larger good of the company. On the contrary, I know of smaller organizations where the outcome is measured in a very, very complex way with no transparency. This benefits the organization but not the salesperson. So as a leader, what you need to do is you need to be clear on how you want to measure your team. As a founder, you set the rules. You should articulate them well and be transparent about it. So my next point, which I want to kind of emphasize on, is communication and enlisting contribution. Okay, these two things go together. So there's an important disconnect that you should always be aware of. Corporate mumbo jumbo of vision, goals, roles, and responsibilities as written down on paper or on your intranet is not communication. As a leader, what you should be able to do, you should be able to articulate to your team how your work connects and contributes to the larger goal. If you can't do that, how can you expect your team members to relate to the larger goal? So share your vision of how their work help in achieving the purpose. Tell your goals, plans, strategy, concerns, questions, doubts to your team. I'll give you another example here. If your goal is to maximize profits, for example, then you should communicate that clearly. You should articulate the decision-making criteria. So when your team comes up with an investment proposal, they will ensure that the proposal is maximizing profits and not revenues. In another case, I'll also tell you, pushing inventory levels was the most important short-term goal to improve profitability. The CEO understood that, and he ensured that he communicated that all we need to do is to push inventory as a priority action. This automatically empowered the sales to offer higher discounts. So what you're doing is, the more you communicate, the more you're enabling your people to take decisions which are appropriate in line with the larger goal. The more easily you make the team understand in the vision, the better it is to get their cooperation. Please understand that. And I can't emphasize this anymore. You as a leader, you need to learn effective presentation skills, be it email or presentations or a two-way dialogue, sitting across, talking to people one-on-one, one-to-many, questioning. You have to learn that and analyze and present complex stuff in simple words. Just remember, the people out there don't understand as much as what you understand. If you can say it in simple English, simple words, complex things. People call about the elevator statement, right, for a startup. In 45 seconds, how can you tell what your business is all about to a potential investor in 45 seconds? Okay? That ability to communicate is very, very important. So, and I kind of, get to the last point about taking the right path. You need to figure out, what's the meaning in your work. Don't try to fill in the hours. If you take 5 minutes in a day and ask yourself, what's on the top thing that you must do today that would further the cause of your larger goal of your startup, you'll be really surprised with the answer. What had happened in my case is that it helped me to kind of not postpone some important hiring decisions or spend that money that we wanted to spend, but we know we had to spend, but we were not taking the decision. Okay, so these are the most important things. You need to find meaning, and what I want to do is I want to end this presentation by sharing a simple thought. See, there are several paths to the goal. Some are correct, ethical, less cumbersome. Some are exactly the opposite. Okay, you need to choose the ethical path and to achieve your goal. And if you choose your goal as something which is larger than a selfish goal, that will help you take the right decisions and in turn be the right leader. So I hope that I've kind of given you a broad idea about the 7 elements of being and building, being a leader and building leadership skills in team. So here it doesn't talk about a person being a leader of a bunch of guys. It talks about each one of you being a leader, whether you are a senior enough in an organization or junior enough in an organization. It really doesn't matter. What matters is understanding that leadership is an attitude, it's not a position, and following through some of these basic things that makes a leader. So over to you, Sneha.
Thank you, Rajesh. We are open for Q&A. You can start sending me your questions for the Q&A round.
Are there any questions now?
Yeah, Rajesh, our first question is from Wadhwani. He asked when we can say the change has been made in the terms of leadership and how we can know that.
So, Varun, it's an excellent question. I think if you ask me, it's always a moving target. But as long as you are conscious, you're observing yourself, and you're observing the people around you, then you know that you made the change. Okay. So if you don't observe yourself, why do you get angry most of the time? Do you know? The moment you know that these are 3 reasons why I get angry, then you know that you made the change. Because then the next step will automatically follow. For example, when somebody threatens me, I get angry. The point is, I recognize that, when I'm threatened, my position is threatened, I get angry. So suddenly over a period of time, the number of instances that I get angry because somebody is threatening my position reduces. And that's showing leadership.
Question is from Shahid. He says, suggest some tips to increase the leadership in a period of time like 1 month or more.
Beautiful question. So Sharath, it's not 1 month. In fact, I would say I have written a blog article about this as well. So if you want to form any habit, you just need 21 days, not 1 month. So pick one thing that you think that you want to change as part of your, of your personality. Maybe let's say that you want to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning. Pick the next 21 days and start from tomorrow itself. No need for first of every month or every Monday or whatever. Start from tomorrow. Pick 21 days. Get up at 5 a.m. every day, irrespective of what time you sleep, irrespective of what you have. Okay? And that will form a habit. Please try it.
Next question is from Ajay. He asks, what leadership type is ideal when we are facing competitors who have a better or successful product, and how to keep the team going?
So, Ajay, if I understood your question, you're saying you are probably in a startup or doing something where there are established, better and larger competitors, and you want to know what kind of leadership is appropriate in that context to get yourself and get the team going. So, Ajay, I think the decisions of leadership, like what you look at it, right? This is not something about what your startup is or a strategy for your startup should be. Okay, leadership is all about exhibiting a personal attitude to solve some of those problems. Okay, so either you can shy away from those problems, saying that, okay, hey, there are a bunch of competitors, large guys with tons of money in the market, and I don't think I can compete with them. Or you every day constantly keep asking yourself, okay, how exactly, where is the dent in that armor that I can make? Okay, what is the backdoor entry? What is the Trojan horse that I can build? Now, if you don't ask that questions, then your startup will always have that challenge of seeing yourself around a bunch of large sharks. Okay, but if you start asking those questions, perhaps you will do things very differently.
Our next question is from Umesh. He asks, most of the people stuck at practical exposure and implementation of the target or aim. How to get over it? Suggest some tips to improve the required skills.
Hello? I couldn't hear it very well. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, most of the people stuck at practical exposure and implementation of the target or aim. How to get over it, and suggest some tips to improve the required skills.
So, Umesh, I think, honestly, I don't have all the answers, okay? So what I have seen works for me is what I'm going to share with you here. Like I said sometime back in one of the questions, you have to start at one thing, and you have to change one thing at a time. So the most important thing that I feel that most of us don't do is to observe ourselves, okay? How many of us actually understand that, when we are angry, that we start trembling, or when we are scared, our body reacts in a particular way. Okay. Now, my suggestion is, if you want to start somewhere, start by observing yourself. Okay, as to how you react to situations, and whether that's the right reaction in that particular situation or not. And this is a mental exercise. This is like just as you go to a gym and do exercise. There's a mental exercise where the whole day experience is your gym, and every experience you are asking yourself constantly and consciously saying that, okay, hey, in this situation, this is what happened, and I reacted like this? And is there a pattern? Please understand that. That's probably the most important practical way that you can start off with. And of course, if you want to accelerate that, I would definitely recommend you to start observing, spend 5-10 minutes of, of introspection every day to reflect on what happened yesterday, and then kind of, jot down some mental notes. You don't have to take a paper and pen and write. Jot down some mental notes saying that, okay, this is the hypothesis why I got angry in these situations. Okay, so that anger was not justified. So going forward, if you face similar situations, you're going to get angry, so you can easily control it.
Okay. Our next question is from Raghu. He asks, could you share some situations where a founder or a co-founder in the team should overrule the popular sentiment or opinion of the larger team?
Very interesting question, okay? So the point is like this. As a founder or co-founder, you have the responsibility. The rest of the people have a certain responsibility towards the startup. And your responsibility is quite critical because you know what the vision is. And the time when you have to overrule the people is when their ideas or thoughts don't go with the common larger goal. Okay, what I have okay, now coming back to some practical aspects of it, okay, whether I have experienced this kind of situation or not. So okay, it's probably something which is maybe it's very simple thing. Okay, we wanted to build some product for the rural market, and we decided that we will have the form factor in a particular way because we felt the use case was that some bunch of consumers will use it, and they will use it in this particular fashion. Okay, but there was a lot of resistance from the team, some members of the team saying that no, that is not the use case. We need to find the right use case and then keep building the product. Okay. So we were stuck. Either now we have decided what we have to build, then we have to go ahead and build it, in which case we'll have to spend the money and time and efforts to build what we decided that we want to build, or go back to the drawing boards and start all over again. So at that point of time, we had to take a call. So at that point of time, the priority for us was, it doesn't matter what you build it fast and go to market. Get feedback not on PowerPoint presentations or on mock-up models. Get feedback on real working stuff. So we took a call, irrespective of what others felt, saying that no, we will build the product and take it to the market, then get feedback. It's true that what we took it to the market bombed. Okay, and we had to go back to the drawing boards. But that gave us momentum. So at that point of time, momentum was important for us, not a perfect product.
Last question for the day, Rajesh, is from Satyam. He asks, how can we change our mindset to take risks in life? Any key mantra?
Okay, Satyam, I actually don't understand your question. If you're driving on Indian roads, and I presume that you are living in India, you are actually taking risks. So what is there? Just go ahead and take risks.
That was the last question for the day, Rajesh. Thank you so much, Rajesh, for that interesting session. Thank you to all our attendees for participating in the webinar. We are glad that the questions were really good, and I hope you all were satisfied with the answers as well. Please do send in your feedback and suggestions to us at eclub.at.nenglobal.org. Also, if you found the session interesting, feel free to blog or post about it. The recorded version of the webinar will be available on our website by the end of this week at eclub.nenonline.org. NEN Entrepreneur Support and Training is conducting a 2-day workshop for entrepreneurs on tools for growth across India, first being conducted on April 19th and 20th at Indore. The workshop will include panel discussion and mentoring session by experts. For more details, visit eclub.at.nenonline.org. www.indianonline.org/workshop schedule. Also join us for our next webinar next Wednesday. Thank you all and have a good evening.